Hi, everyone. It's Angela here from She Simply Impacts, and we have an amazing group of women today, Sabine Armbruster, Ravenhill, and Mary Wong, and we are going to talk about the topic of asking for help as women. So accepting and asking for help, because we know that this can be something quite challenging for women, that we've been conditioned to be able to sort of handle the load and take on all the responsibility, all the duties. And so, how do we overcome this when we're really struggling? And how do we reach out and get the support we need? So, who would like to start?
Mm. Look,
Mary?
I'm happy to start, but I think what I would start with is, sometimes when you talked about we take all the load, sometimes I find that we have all this weight on our shoulders and we've got all these things to do, and we ask for help in the wrong way. Because then I find sometimes we're not as aware of what we say and our words, and we snap at people and say, you do this. But it depends, of course, of how close they are to us. Family, well, you snap at family because, they're the closest to you. So it's almost automatic. And I'm not saying that's right by any means, but that's what I thought of when you said that. And I think for me, that's something that we need to, or that I need to be conscious of, is how I ask for help, because it depends on how I ask for help as to whether it happens or not.
Yes.
And so for small things, I find it easy. For larger things where I have to go outside of my family, I sometimes find it very difficult to ask for help because I feel like I need to pay it back and I don't know how.
I
Interesting.
think there's also a thing that goes on that if you've asked for help in the past and haven't got it, then you just think, I might as well do it myself. What's the point in putting the energy into, taking the time to have a conversation with someone that they ignore anyway? So you kind of get into this pattern of not even asking because, well, no one, you create a belief system that no one's going to help me anyway. And I think
Well,
that that's part of the problem.
yeah, and talking for myself, what happens when going into what you said, Mary, is that I sometimes get so pissed off about the fact that nobody is asking if they can help me, that I'm sort of like stubbornly going and doing it myself.
Well, because they're supposed to ask us if they can help, right?
Absolutely. They could
In the
see that.
ideal world.
They can see that you're carrying all this load and they don't.
Yeah, why aren't they offering? I mean, goodness. That goes on too. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do believe that there is a difference in asking for help in like a familiar situation, like family and everything, and asking for help in like a business situation. And speaking again for myself, I don't have so much problem, even though sometimes I'm like, and do it myself. I don't have problems to ask for help in familiar situations. I do have more of a problem in business situations. And I do believe that that comes back to the fact that very often I do not know how to ask for help because my mind's not clear on what I want help with.
What's the help that you need?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
But how do you know? So, what are you experiencing? So, in those moments, like, there's some internal thing going on. What is that?
Well, for me, it's very often that I am like, okay, I should probably ask somebody for help and to look over this. But, when I'm looking at that, it's not done yet. It's not ready to discuss. And so I stop and go back and try to figure it out myself a little bit more, get stuck in it, and then give up.
Is there a belief system? Do you think that I should know this? Because we should all over ourselves, right?
No,
I should know this, and I
it's
don't
not,
want to show up as not knowing it.
no, it's not so much that. I think it all comes back to, and because I mean, I've done quite a lot of self-development and I'm trying to get over some of the beliefs that I had. But in the past, when I was younger, there was very often when I expressed my ideas or was asking for feedback, people were looking at me as if they saw crickets because I was not that good at explaining what I wanted or my ideas. So there was this idea that I was very chaotic, it didn't make sense at all, and I was sort of dismissed. So that's is something that is quite deep ingrained. And that comes up all the time when I'm sort of like at that point where I'm saying, oh yeah, maybe I should do that. Should. Okay, I could do that. Let's stop the shoots. But yeah, am I clear enough in my own mind so that I can explain what I'm doing or what I want out of this conversation or the help or whatever it is? But mind you, when I'm clear, I do ask for help. It's not that I don't ask for help. It's just that moment in between where it holds me back to ask for help and to sit long.
Do you find that there's a time between when you're clear about asking for help and then you go, yeah, I'm going to talk to this person in a couple of days' time, but then in that time, you somehow become unclear again?
Well, that does happen.
Yeah.
It does happen so sometimes because you start overthinking again and you're like, I thought I was there, but I'm not. So my general rule is that if I want help, I have to ask and I'm ready to ask for it, not in a couple of days, but immediately.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I like that. I like the rule. I like having a rule for yourself. I like that idea. Specifically around asking. How about you, Ange? You haven't come into this conversation yet. What about you? How are you with asking for help?
I'm very independent and I don't really ask for help very often. And I think that is a detriment to my progress in at times, especially like in, I guess, the progression of the goal in She Simply Impacts. Like that's definitely one area that I can think of. And then I've sort of set up my professional life so that I'm quite autonomous. But I mean, that's why I set up She Simply Impacts in the first place, was all about the emotional help. So I feel that what I value is the emotional help to actually either get through a difficulty or either overcome a limitation or, just if I get triggered or so I think that, yeah, I would definitely say that I've just from my own upbringing and I've just used to doing everything by myself, that it is a barrier to growth.
Do you see that as something you learnt from your mother? Because I do. I see it as something I learnt from my mother.
Yeah, I mean, my mum was good at rallying the troops to get a fundraiser done, or she was really brilliant at selling tickets for it. And she was brilliant at rallying the troops to come and work in the kitchen so that they could roll out these, fundraisers for a dinner for 300 people, like these large scale things. But I think ultimately in the home, my mum never asked for help. My mum did everything herself. She was kind of a bit of a slave. And I sort of look back and feel bad about that I never helped her. And that when in her
Was she a 50s mum? Was she a 50s mum?
Well, she was born
50s wife?
She was born in 1932.
Yeah, so's mine, actually. Yeah. Same year. Same year, same era. Yeah, because they kind of were very self-sufficient, those women. They in the home, well, that was our experience in the home, was they were very, very self-sufficient. They There was this idea that they were the housewife and their role was to be the housewife and to look after the house, and they made sure they did their job. That was their job.
Yeah.
And they made sure they did it. And my mum was very much like that. She would go to bed at 2:30, 3 in the morning and be up at 5 to get the cows up before breakfast. She just kept going. And Dad would be sitting in the lounge chair because he'd been at work all day and watching TV, and she wouldn't be going, well, do you reckon you could get up and do this so that I can get to bed at a reasonable hour tonight? No, nothing like that. No, because that wasn't his job. It was her job. So, yeah, interesting, isn't it?
It is interesting because my mom is from the same era, but I think the difference between your mother's probably and mine was my mom was very depressed. So she didn't do much. It was my father that did most of the things. Like he was at the breakfast table in the morning. My mom slept in late,
Really?
and I think because I feel that independence that I have that too. And I think for me that came because I couldn't rely on adults. So I had to do it myself. And I decided for myself that I would not rely on them and I would figure it out myself.
Mm. Mm. I grew up in the country where you had to be self-sufficient. Getting help was a huge deal. I mean, we didn't have the money either. So we learnt to innovate. We learnt to find our ways around things, and we learnt to be very, very capable. And I think that in some ways that's also to our detriment, because just because you can do something doesn't mean you should be doing that thing. And I know that I can do a million things, and sometimes I try to do a million things. Just because I know I can do all of those things. It's easy. And then I overwhelm myself because I'm trying to do too much. And in that situation, then you kind of feel, I guess, a little bit guilty asking for help because, I got myself into this mess. I should get myself out. My own silly fault. All of that sort of self-talk goes on around it sometimes. It's like, I got myself into this mess. Why should I be asking someone else to help me out? It's my own fault.
It's probably that guilt and shame, because I remember that when I had a baby and I was very isolated because I'd moved to a new city when I was pregnant, so I didn't have friends or family. So all the friends I had, they were all new friends, and I didn't feel comfortable asking any new friends for help. And we had these family friends that I'm still friends with now, and they're now in their 80s, that knew me when I was, and they, from the outside, they thought I was coping. Like they thought that I was very capable and that I was deathly lonely. And, and I guess, I guess I look back and I can acknowledge, yes, I was coping, but I wasn't thriving. I was not thriving. And I never asked for help.
I wasn't coping. I wasn't coping when I had my new babies. I wasn't coping. I had a 4-year-old and then a new baby on the back of an IVF treatment. And IVF kind of messes with your brain a bit. So my hormones were all over the place and I wasn't coping. I wasn't in a good way at all. But I wasn't asking for help because, you just don't do that. It's just not done. And I'd also been a nurse, and I'd gone through the nursing system. This is a lot of years ago now, but I'd gone through the nursing system when there was a huge stigma against any kind of mental health problem. So I'd gone through knowing that, telling someone you were depressed was only going to get them kick you in the pants and say, well, snap out of it and get on with it. So, I just had to tough it out and I would be fine until I got to a point where I didn't want to be here. And I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about how my husband worked long hours and really didn't know how to look after the kids anyway because he was never there. And I thought, I can't go and leave my kids. And there was that moment where the thought came that I needed to take them with me. And that one moment was like the bucket of ice on my head. It was that moment that really woke me up and made me go, holy crap, what am I thinking about? And it made me reach for help. But I didn't reach for help for me. I reached for help for my children. So I'm better at asking for help when it's for someone else than I am at for myself. But my words around that, my words of advice around that, looking back, is that when we don't ask for help for ourselves, then we become helpless for others and we can't help others. So we have to reach out when we're in trouble, when we need help. We have to reach out. We have to ask. That day when I had that thought, I just rang a psychologist office and said, I'm in trouble. I'm thinking about hurting myself and my children. They got me in the same day. I was immediately able to see someone who was able to talk me down from where I was and get me sorted out to a point where I had an understanding of what was going on so that I wasn't responding to the thoughts that were coming in. And I was able to get myself sorted. And that was probably, I mean, that, definitely, no, probably about it. That was definitely the darkest day in my life. And if I hadn't reached out that day, I wouldn't be here and nor would my kids. So, ooh. Even just thinking about that and going back there, you know, and being open and vulnerable about it, because if we don't open up and talk about when we need help, we don't empower other people to do the same. If we don't ask for help, people around us don't feel that they can ask for help. If we don't, you know, open up and be real and live life real, not this plastic life that we see on Instagram or Facebook where everything's picture perfect. It's real. Real life has its ups and downs. And if we're not open about the ups and downs, and if we don't share our ups and downs and show our naked underbelly where it's hurting, and get the help that we need, we don't empower other people to do the same thing. And that's why it's so important. That's why I still talk about what happened. I mean, I'm way past where I was then. And it doesn't mean I haven't had dark days or difficult days since then. I still do. I mean, going through some stuff at the moment. That's probably why I got a bit triggered thinking about it. But, you know, stuff happens. And if we close ourselves up on reaching out for help when stuff's happening, then we take our own power away.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's such a hard thing to do, though, even with all of that, because it has been ingrained in me since babyhood. But you don't ask for help, you just get on. And when you're feeling down, you just snap out of it, and all of that sort of thing. Because that was what my mum did. She had 6 kids in 8 years. And she said to me once a few years ago, we were talking about postnatal depression, and she said, oh yeah, you know, I went through some stuff after one of the kids. I can't remember if it was the 3rd one or the 4th one. I had a few kids, which the 3rd one would have been 3 under 3, and the 4th one would have been 4 under 5. So if you can imagine, and she was isolated socially. She was living on a property out in the middle of nowhere. And she said, yeah, no, so I went to town and I got some, I don't know, sustagen or something like that, and it boosted my iron levels, and I was all right. I just got on with it. And I was like, wow, this is a very strong, tough lady. You got some sustagen and got on with it. You know, like, how's that for resilience? How's that for strength? But how lonely she must have been when she went through all of that by herself. How sad to have to do all of that by herself. You know, because Dad was in town working. He wasn't there. It was her and the kids all day, every day, with the snakes and all the other things that she got on the hill there, all isolated
Mary,
from other
you
people.
touched on something before that I think is really important, and that was that you reached out to a psychologist or a psychiatrist and said, these are my thoughts, you know. And I think that you know, with the way mental health is now, the challenges that people have now, the pressure that people have on them now, I would love to see that as a really standard thing in people's lives, is to have access to a psychologist. Because if we can't reach out to a friend or family or business colleague to ask for help, well, then that's something that we need to talk through. And whether it's asking, whether it's going to them to actually say, this is what's happening in my life, or voicing the help that you need with them to find a solution, I think psychologists should be a really normalized thing in society now.
Yeah.
And I think that would help a lot of people.
Well, of course, there's Lifeline, and always, and Ange, I think that Lifeline needs to be, the number for Lifeline needs to be put up with this episode because we're talking about suicide. It's very important. What happens like when we talk about asking for help for mental health, a lot of people aren't sure what to do and they're scared of saying and doing the wrong thing in that situation. So they tend to avoid those topics.
Don't forget that mental health is a huge range.
Yeah.
It can be something really simple for somebody and something really complex for someone else.
Exactly.
You've actually got mental health issues or not, to be able to go to them and talk through things.
Absolutely. So it doesn't have to be a mental health issue, but if I could just say the mental health, if it is a mental health issue, what I recommend for absolutely every person on this planet, and I think it should be a requirement for everyone, is to do a mental health first aid course. Get yourself, it's MHFA. If you look it up, you'll find it. Do a mental health first aid course, because what that does is it teaches you what to do when someone comes to you with a mental health problem, so that you don't create a bigger problem, but you're able to get them the help that they need when they need it. And you can recognize whether it's a serious problem or whether, this is just something that we can sit and have a cup of tea and chat about and it'll get them over it. And you know the right questions to ask and you know the right ways to approach it. And it makes a huge difference. It's a really big thing.
I think that it's very important what you say there to make sure that you don't make a situation worse. Because I don't know if you've ever experienced where somebody gave you help, but it didn't help. Where there was that.
I was
from a good heart, but
before I got to the point where I was that I described before, I mentioned it to someone I knew who was a coach. And this is where my faith in the coaching industry was really knocked. And it was sometime later that I discovered what coaching actually was, and that what that person had said to me definitely wasn't coaching, because there's coaches and there's people who say they're coaches, right? But I was in depression. I knew I was in depression. I said to this person I was in depression. They said, oh, goodness, just, wind your windows down, drive down the freeway with the music playing loud, and, singing something like I Am Woman, and drive really fast and it'll all go away. It'll just be fine. You'll feel great.
You bang into something.
Yeah, it'll all go away. I'll be in heaven, and so will half the rest of the freeway. That's really bad advice. So, yes, it is important to understand what's reasonable advice to give in those situations and what's not. And that's why I find that course is really good for that.
Yeah. Well, and I think as a person, it's also important for yourself to understand what is helpful and what is not helpful, and to say no to things that are not helping.
Yeah, for yourself. Yeah. And knowing yourself and understanding what works for you. Yeah. And be able to say no. Yeah, that's not right for me.
Yeah, because I mean, I was just, when you were talking about the birth of your kids and everything, I had somebody who helped me when I had my first child. I had a very difficult birth. I was more than 36 hours, so I was like completely of this world. And I had a friend who had 5 kids, and she loved having kids, and she loved giving birth, and she loved being pregnant. And I felt a little bit like an alien at the end of my pregnancy, because I thought my body is not my body anymore. And because my whole delivery was so long, they gave me morphine, and I was induced. So that whole thing was a blur, but I was exhausted after that. And so I didn't know what to do with that baby. And I felt very alone, even though there was that person sitting next to me saying, oh, you should do this, you should do that, you da 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 da. And I just couldn't relate to her. It was really weird, but I was like, I don't know what to do with you, and I don't know what to do with my baby. I mean, not that I did anything wrong because, but I felt very lonely at that time as well. And so she helped me, but she didn't because she could not relate to my situation in one way, shape, or another.
Yeah.
And so it's important to recognize that too. And in the end, I sent her away, and I kept on feeling very lonely until I met other women that had babies in the same age group as mine. And I realized that all the problems I had, they had them too. Because that is very often also very relatable. I mean, if you can relate to somebody, that helps too.
Yeah, finding support from people going through and understanding that the same sort of thing, or who've been through what you're going through. So
and sort of normalizing it instead of you feeling like a failure because you're not doing what everybody told you that would happen.
Yeah. Oh, because we've got this idea around childbirth that it's all this, again, it's that unrealistic view of, it's all so wonderful, you're just filled with the love hormones and it's all so beautiful. And there's those moments.
I had all these friends that were talking about the pink clouds you would be on for the rest of your life, and you had to enjoy it because it would go so fast. Well, I've had 2 kids. I was so glad when the first year was over for both of them. I mean,
see, I love babies. I've always loved babies. I couldn't wait to have my baby.
Yes.
And no, but I was a midwife, and they used to laugh at me because they'd say to me, you went with the little babies, and I'd be giving them baths, and they'd go, God, you're just about in the bath with it. You're just so, into this bathing the baby thing and all the rest of it. And what I found really amazing, so I never had any problems with my first one as far as bonding or attaching or anything else like that. I didn't have postnatal depression. I was on the high. I was way out there on the high, really the happy mummy. But there was this very weird thing that went on in that all the same while I was holding that little one and feeling the love and feeling everything else, I felt like I was loving someone else's baby. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel like it was mine. I'd waited so long for it that it just didn't feel real. And it was this very surreal sort of thing. It took, I think it was about 8 months old before I started to feel like I was actually his mother. It took a long time. Even though I adored him and I loved him and everything else, it just didn't feel like it was mine. Yeah. The second one was very different. Second one was very, very different. But then the first one, oh God, he was really hard work. He had serious ADHD from when he was a tiny baby, and he was like a cyclone. He just never sat still. And I thought it was normal. I just thought, because I knew how to look after babies, but I didn't really know much about toddlers and little kids. So when he got to be this cyclonic event going through everything, I just sort of went, well, little kids are busy, I guess. And it wasn't until I had the second one, I used to sit him down and he'd be playing with the same toy 5 minutes later. I'd go, what's going on? Is there something wrong with this kid? I remember saying to someone else, I don't know what's going on with this kid. He just sits still. And they're like, well, yeah, they get something and they play with it. I'm like, he never did. No, there's something wrong with this one, not this one. Turns out. Anyway, that's life.
No, but this is really interesting because watch where this conversation's gone. So we didn't script this, and it's gone to asking for help when you've got a baby,
Yeah.
Like, because obviously having a baby, like I'm a grandmother now, so having a baby is really, like obviously a memory, a profound thing in a woman's life, and we never forget it, like the imprint is still so strong always. But, when it comes to asking for help as adults, we're not in this baby mode where we're not, what is the barriers at that point? You know what I mean? So what do you think, Sabina?
Hang on, what do you mean in what way? So we're talking about now? What do you mean?
So do you feel comfortable asking for help?
Do I feel comfortable asking for help? Well, it depends on the situation for me. Yeah, it really depends on the situation. I think it comes back to what Birgitta said earlier, and that's around, one is clarity. And two, I mentioned earlier that if you ask for help, how can you repay that? And if you can't see a way, if I can't see a way to repay that, then I often don't ask. So I think I like the idea of the rules, because the rules then overrule those type of thoughts. That's how it works for me.
I think it's an
The
interesting. Yeah, the
Sorry.
rule was ask for help when you need it and not wait.
That's
But
right.
you had a very interesting thing that you said, and maybe we can explore that a little bit further, because what you said is you don't ask for help if you do not know how to repay it. So for you, there is also always that reciprocity that has to go on, where you have to be able to give back. So do you not feel that you're in a way limiting yourself? So I mean, let's phrase the question otherwise. If you give help, do you always expect something
Oh,
back?
God, no, absolutely not.
Okay,
Absolutely not. But, it
interesting.
depends on the situation as well. And it depends on what sort of help you're asking for. If you're asking to, help clean the kitchen, or if you're asking for, I don't know, someone to, help you for a day to sort something out, like, what is that help? What is that help? Because asking for someone's time, no one has time. So for me, I'm really reluctant to ask for a lot of time from someone if I can't repay that, because everyone is short on time. And I agree with you, Birgitta, that if someone needs help, I want them to ask, and it doesn't matter how much time it takes me. But I'm also very aware that a lot of people don't process the being asked for help for time, especially in the way that you give it without expecting anything in return. So there's a lot of things going on there.
Yeah.
It's really different for every situation. It's different for work. It's different for personal life. It's different for family. It's different if you ask your grandparents as opposed to a close friend, as opposed to a work colleague. They're all different situations. So I'm finding it very difficult to kind of answer that in a blanket sort of an answer.
Yeah. No, that's
But what I do want to say is that I think it is very important to ask for help. If you need help and you've got something that's stopping you from moving forward, then you have to ask for help, because the person that's going to lose out is you.
Yeah. So if I may, because you stirred up some thoughts, and I've had lots of discussions about this topic, asking for help or not asking for help. And one of the things that comes out of that all the time is that people are happy to give help, but are reluctant to ask for help. Now, the question is, if you do not ask for help, are you depriving the other person that you might have asked for help of a fulfillment that they feel when they're helping someone? Because we all have that in us. So it's sort of turning the whole idea upside down, where you're actually saying to yourself, if I don't ask for help, I'm actually shortcutting somebody of something that will help them or will fulfill them. Or
Yeah, I've seen that
Well,
in
yes and
nursing.
no. Yes and no. I think sometimes yes, and I think sometimes no. Because I think the other side of the other end of that is the person that's being asked for help, if they actually can't help selflessly, then they need to learn to say no. And that's a very difficult thing. And if you don't learn to say no, then you end up angry and peeved that you had all this time that you had to donate that you didn't have.
Right.
So it's a bit of a, like it is a big discussion. And I think there's a lot of aspects to it. There's a lot of sides to it. And I think asking for help for me is I need to assess the situation. Am I asking the right person? Can they provide that? Where are they at? Can I do something in return? What is our relationship? How important is this really to me? Is this a priority? Do I actually know what I'm asking for? Am I clear on that? Am I able to express what it is that I want and why this is important to me? You know, there's so many questions.
Yeah. And I think the question is also, how do I ask for help? Do I ask for help in saying, you have to help me? Or do I ask for help where the other person generously can step out without feeling that they are shortcutting you?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, sorry.
I'm like Sabina, like I'm really conscious of people's time, and I'm really conscious of, you know, their capacity and I guess the relationship, and, you know, but I definitely know that having a community where you know, like having a community where you have those relationships where you can be real, that's the first step.
Mm. True. I agree. But still, even though you have that community, you might still have that restrictions in, I'm not asking for help because they are limited in time. They are. And the question that I have that comes to mind immediately, so you are sitting in their chair thinking for them. So you're sort of mind reading what they think. You don't give them the opportunity to help you because you decide that they don't have time, or they don't want to help, or they don't have the capacity, or they don't.
Right.
And I think as women specifically, we have to learn to let that element go and do ask for help, but don't expect them to help you, sort of.
And be
I
okay.
think it's the level of awareness.
Yeah.
You know, we're always talking about awareness. You know, all of us here, whenever we do these panels with Angela, somehow the conversation seems to come back to two things. One is community and one is awareness.
Absolutely.
And they're both incredibly important, even when we're talking about the topic of asking for help.
Absolutely.
I belong to a Facebook group called How Can I Help? And which is, I haven't seen much come up from them lately. I don't know if it's the algorithm or if they're still around. I don't know. But there was a period of time where that group was very, very active on my Facebook. And they had about 1,000 people in there. And they used to go in and they'd come up, someone would see something. And they'd go, you know what, this person really needs a hand up or a hand out or, you know, whatever. And they put it on the group and they go, hey, I met this person whose their bed's just broken and they've got absolutely no money left to get themselves a new bed. And does anyone have a bed they don't want? And people would go, yeah, I've got one, but I can't get it there. And then someone else would go, oh, well, I've got a truck, I'll take it down there. You know, and people would just all help each other. And it was really quite beautiful. And if people couldn't help, they go, oh, no, can't do that one, sorry. But when something came up that they could do, they'd help out. It was just the most beautiful community. And I think that sort of thing actually does go on in places. It goes on a lot in the neighborhood groups as well. There's a couple of the you know, the free gifting groups and things like that around as well. But you also see in the local neighborhood groups, people go, oh, look, I'm stuck with X. Can anybody help me? And people go, yeah, I'll help you out with that. And it's really beautiful to see and to recognize that there is help out there and that people do like giving it, that they do like helping. And I agree with you, Brigitte, that when we don't ask, we're taking that opportunity away from them because it makes them feel good. It makes you feel good. Anybody who jumps in and helps out knows, and I know that all four of us do that, knows that when we've helped someone out, it's a privilege. And it makes you feel really good that person has allowed you into their space to do something that supports them. And it's such a privilege. So when we don't ask, we're taking that privilege away. Yeah. It doesn't mean that they have to say yes, like you said, Brigitte. It doesn't mean they have to say yes, because sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's like, oh, I'd really like to, but I can't. But you know what? Let me think about who else can. And that's a really good way to say no as well, is to go, oh, gee, I can't, but I know of X. Have you tried this or have you tried that as a suggestion? And that can sometimes also be the leverage that person needs to get out of whatever hole they're in.
Absolutely. Well, you can see it on some of the Facebook posts that are there where
Mm,
somebody asks for help in some way. If you
mm,
look at the amount of comments that come to a post like that, where people are like really, some people are idiots and they post something really not related, but most people are really genuinely like, oh,
mm,
I can help, or looking, or they're sort of saying, oh, I can't help you with this, but I wish you all the luck, and
mm,
it's that kind of thing that really helps the people as well.
mm.
So
I've
I think
gotten good
those
stuff like with tech problems. If you're going, oh my goodness, I'm trying to do X and it just won't work. Does anyone know what I'm doing wrong? And someone will come and go, oh, have you done, check that little box there. And it's like, oh, fantastic. That fixed it. And little things like that, rather than sitting there going, well, I can't get this silly thing to work and Googling it and everything else. And it's not coming up and you're not getting an answer. Ask. And if nobody knows, well, at least you asked the question. Yes, you mightn't have got an answer, but at least you've asked.
Well, I think those
yeah,
groups are great for that because
Yeah.
you can either be, if someone asks for help, you can either speak up or be silent. There's
Mm,
so many
absolutely.
other people in there as well, and those groups
Yes.
are great for that. My question is, how many people are actually really vulnerable when they need something personal on those groups, or does that take us back to the community? Like this community, like She Simply Impacts, a good group of friends, where you go, where everyone said, if you need help, can you please ask?
Mm.
But you have to back that up with your actions as well. But
mm,
yeah, Ange, I think community is incredibly important. And there's the Facebook community, but there's also, your network of people and you have to surround yourself with people that you want to help and you know that they're there for you. It's so essential.
Absolutely.
mm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
That's why you
accepting
see,
it.
yeah.
And then accepting it. Then
Mm.
going, thank you. Like, how do you thank someone who's stepped up and helped you? How do you contribute in a way that makes you feel good about having accepted the help? What is it that you do?
Me?
Yeah, and you can answer that one.
Well, I thank them. Obviously, a verbal thank you profusely, a follow up messages, and then, then I will, think of something else that's relevant in that relationship. Like once I asked this personal trainer at the gym if he could come and be in my branding shots. And so I said, I'm happy to offer you some coaching, to help you in your business, but he didn't need that. He was actually this really, really happy guy who's got his life just the way he wants it, and he's got his own version of success. And I really felt there's nothing I can't add any value with those skills. So then I baked him some bread.
I want to say you bake a cake. Yeah. Something like that.
And I dropped it around to his
Mm,
house, as a thank you. And I see him at the gym occasionally, but, he was just so generous in giving up his time and coming to my home. He didn't even know me, but I just took a
mm.
chance because he was so friendly to me. And the shoot was that day and I still hadn't organised anybody.
It happens, doesn't it? Things sneak up on you sometimes.
And, there's certain things that I'm better at helping with, and
Mm,
certain things I'm not that helpful with. And it comes back to that volition, it's like it's something that would cause me friction or whatever if I did it. So I'm, learning how to offer and I guess be authentic, but also, step in when it's something that I know I can help and it's a privilege to help, so it's sort of also that thing, the volition. But that was one example where some random guy from the gym came around and I'd seen him over the years, so
it wasn't completely random.
But
You
Mary, I
didn't.
think with that, I think we need to learn to just say thank you.
Because
If
sometimes you're
someone
not in a
offers help,
position, sometimes
yeah,
you're not
to
in a
do
position
more.
to give anything in response, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you've just got to accept it with grace and just go, thank you. I don't know how I can ever repay you, but I really appreciate what you've done. And I think that it is inherent on us to say thank you. I think that that's something that should always happen, that we should show
Absolutely.
our appreciation. I do know of times in my life where I've helped someone and they have absolutely ghosted me afterwards, not because they weren't happy with the help that they got, but because they were so embarrassed that they felt like they couldn't pay back. And I find that really sad. I think that's really sad that if you feel so unworthy of accepting something that's basically being gifted to you, that you then shun the person who's given it to you, that speaks to a bigger problem. So I think accept with grace. And if you can't pay back right there and then, it doesn't matter. Because I always say to people, if I'm helping someone, it's okay, because they go, I can't pay you back for that. And it's like, that's okay. I'm giving you this. It's a gift. When you're ready and able and you see someone else who needs a gift, give it to them. Because as far as I'm concerned, I've had my fair exchange already. I've given you the gift, and that's how it works. That's what a gift is. So that's how I look, pay it forward. I'm very much into the pay it forward. And I find that helps people accept it a lot better too. When you say, when you're in a position to do it, help someone else.
Yeah, because that is one of the things that not always, but sometimes happen with people especially when something that the help that has been given to them is very generous, that they feel that they can't pay back, and that puts guilt onto guilt onto guilt onto guilt, and they start avoiding you because they don't know how. And so I had discussions about those things as well. And one of my mentors said, you always have to give them something, some way to pay you back. Even if you say pay it forward to somebody else is a way of paying you back. But it can also be that they bake a bread or something. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be equal value, but it has to be something where they say, I have given something in return. And so we come back to what Sabine said in the beginning, where you're always thinking on how can I repay them. So it's interesting how things sort of move around in the discussion that we're having.
I don't know if I like that you need to think of a way of saying thank you. I think we need to learn to just say thank you.
Yeah, in a way, yes, but it depends on what you do. And this was, by the way, in relation to coaching sessions, where you give somebody a lot of value, where you help them forward, where they get something they would otherwise not get, and then having an ability to let them repay you instead of saying no, it's okay. And I'm not saying if they don't want to, they don't have to, but it's more like if they want to repay you in one way or another, it doesn't have to be equal value, but it should be something, it could be something small, or it could be whatever they think of.
Maybe it's about setting the scene up front and saying, this is the way, I'm going to help you, but I don't expect anything in return. Or if you really feel like you need something, if you really feel like you need to pay, you show me thanks, well, then you could do it this way. Maybe it's the setting the scene up front,
Yeah.
What I normally would want is just for people to say thank you.
Yeah.
Just a thank you. I think it's important to learn to say thank you. I think a thank you is lovely to be able to say.
Yeah. Is it I'm going to help you? Is it can I help you? And please understand that I don't expect anything in return, rather than I'll help you. I'm going to do this for you. It's to me, one of the really important things about giving help is to make sure that the help is actually wanted, that we're not jumping in and
absolutely
trying to take over someone else's issue for them. I think
the
it's
advisory
really
monster.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it is a matter of going, can I help? Here's a suggestion. How do you feel about that? Would that fit? Would that work for you? And please understand, I don't expect repayment for this. It's, a simple thank you is more than enough.
Yeah, and but still, I think it depends a little bit on the situation as well. Because if you ask somebody to help you with the dishes, you don't expect a thank you. You just expect them to do it.
If I'm asking someone to help with the dishes, it's because I cooked dinner for them, so they're jolly well already been paid for it.
You know what? I always say thank you. If I ask someone to do the dishes for me and they do it, it's like, oh God, thank you. Even if it's one of
no, I still say thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I still say thank you, even though they've already been paid for it. Because if you don't show appreciation, it doesn't keep happening, right?
That's right.
And there's that book, Happy Money, in that book. Have you read Happy Money by Ken Honda?
Yes. I haven't read the book, but I know.
Thank you. And, remembering to say thank you. Apparently someone said it 100,000 times and all his money problems disappeared. But I know.
Thank you. So
it's interesting because we've gone from asking, like feeling worthy to ask for help when we need it, then resolving and dissolving the guilt and shame around how can I repay you back. And then the other flip side is seeing that someone's struggling and then imposing help when it hasn't been asked for. And so there's all these nuances. And obviously with new mums, it's such an imprint when we all became mothers. And, it's such a hard job being a mum. Like my daughter's got a 6-month-old baby. And, that imprint around help and how much support we got, and seeing our mothers struggle as and never asking for help. It's really interesting. And seeing my mother ask all these people for help, in these charity events, and raising money. So it's a really, it's a fascinating topic. And hopefully you've got something out of that. I've certainly got something out of the discussion, and I definitely know that there is room for me to continue working around this issue. So it's a work in progress. I'm not there where I want to be yet, but I'm not giving up on working on myself. And
me neither.
Yeah.
Yeah. I believe we're all learning. We're all work in progress.
Always a work in progress.
Yeah. Absolutely. So hopefully, if you haven't checked out She Simply Impacts, make sure that you do that, because we're all coaches on the platform, and obviously the platform is there for you to feel heard, supported, and become unstoppable in career, business, and life. And let's face it, it's a work in progress. So thank you so much if you're listening, and thanks, ladies. I really appreciate you and your amazing contribution, and we will see you online. So take care and bye for now.
Thank you so much.